welcome to a new series of interviews. For those of you that have never seen any of my interviews or haven't been following me in my community, I usually do interviews with yachties so that aspiring yachties can learn their stories, their mistakes, their successes. And as the great Tony Robbins says, if you want to be successful, follow somebody that is successful, right? So what I wanted to do with the next series of interviews is interview professionals in yachting so that everybody can get a whole idea from yachting from an outside perspective, or like a more rounded perspective of yachting. So today I'm sitting with the infamous Rouw from Yachting International Radio. I'm very excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me.
No, thank you for inviting me. It's not very often that I get interviewed. I usually do all the interviewing myself.
What does it feel like to be on the other side?
Awkward.
All right, so Rhea, I mean, you established Yachting International Radio. What has been your mission statement with Yachting International Radio? Like, what has been the purpose with it?
The purpose of it is to change the face of the industry. We are in 2020 now, and it's almost as if the yachting industry hasn't really moved much since about 1990. And I saw that there was a big need in order for it to come to the times today. We are seeing so much change within the yachting industry, not only with crew, but with owners, the direction in which yachting is going in regards to the environment. And there wasn't anything that was really showcasing this and giving voice to the new people that were coming into the industry and being part of the industry. So I wanted to set that up in order to create that change and to help that change along a lot quicker.
That's really, really cool. Okay, so let's start off with your story. What is your history? Where did you grow up? Do you have any sort of history as far as boating goes?
Well, I was born and raised in Canada. I grew up in a small northern British Columbia town in a logging yard, so I am a redneck through and through. I grew up not knowing there was a yachting industry because of course, Canada, I mean, even to this stage, I think there's only about 2 super yachts in the entire country. And those are the only 2 super yachts available for charter. It's not, I mean, the weather isn't conducive to yachting, as we all know. Mind you, that is changing now with the change in yachting. I spent my summers in logging camps, and most of these camps were situated near rivers. So I did spend a lot of time in riverboats, fishing. At one point, my father bought a 32-foot bayliner, never taking his captain's license. So every time he left dock and came into dock, he would usually smash into something. So there is a good reason why you need to get your captain's license. But yeah, I got into media at the age of 20 because media was my passion. And I just loved the ability to hear people, what they were interested in, what they were talking about, unbiased views, unbiased opinions. And that kind of led to where I am today.
That's really awesome. Okay, so you basically explained how you got into the industry and everything. And is doing media different to what you wanted to do, like when you were a kid?
Do you know what? No, when I was a kid, when I think up until probably about the age of 15, I wanted to take over my father's logging company. But of course, you know, being in that era, I won't tell you how old I am, being in that era, and of course, being in logging, a woman's place was barefoot and pregnant, cooking and cleaning, getting married, being a mom. And my father quickly put the idea to rest, because I did have an older brother, that there was no way that I was ever going to be taking over his logging company, because that wasn't the place for a woman. And so after a while, I gradually started, I had a friend that actually worked in newspaper. And I found what she did fascinating. And so that's where I first got into media, was in newspaper. And that was where my passion came.
Okay, that's really cool. So you found your calling. That's awesome. Yeah. Tell me, why and how did you decide to, I mean, you were in media, and then what was it that got you exposed to yachting, or like, when did that moment happen when you realized that you wanted to start Yachting International Radio?
Well, I had moved to Mallorca, and I met, I mean, being English speaking, coming from Canada, the people that obviously, you know, being sort of a traveling nomad as you were, the people that I became friends with and we always create our family wherever we go, were yachties. And I found it oddly similar, a lot of the things that went on in the yachting industry to media, in the simple fact that there were natural biases, there were gender issues. You know, it was definitely a white, middle-class, male-dominated industry. And media was the same. And I'd worked for so many of these guys my entire career. And it just got to the point where I'm like, you know what, it's time for a change. It's time for a change for me. So I'm going to start up a radio station. Now, it ended up evolving into what it is today. It's not just radio, it is literally every platform known to mankind. But, you know, what am I going to do this for? Because there's media for everything, and there is mainstream media. There's no way that you're ever going to break into mainstream media unless you're like NBC or CBS or, you know, the big ones. And then I took a look at yachting and I thought, well, you know what, there isn't anything like this in yachting. And I want to make a change. So hopefully I'll be able to utilize my platforms to make a change, not only with media, but as well with yachting at the same time.
Yeah, for sure you will, definitely. Okay, so you were saying, we were discussing a little bit about like the changes that have happened in the industry. Now, what changes specifically have you noticed, if any, since you started the radio? Like, is there anything big that really stands out when you think about the changes that have happened recently?
Not necessarily since I started the radio, but since I was exposed to the yachting industry 15, 16 years ago. Not only is there an immense amount of tickets that you now have to get before you can even walk onto the boat, for sure, but the age range has changed. We are seeing more and more people that are buying boats. Yacht owners are coming down in age. We're not seeing the days of the Greek shipping magnates sitting in the Mediterranean Sea, surrounded by a bunch of prostitutes anymore. That's long gone. That's old school. We are now seeing, you know, 45-year-old multi-billionaires that are getting excursion yachts. We are seeing them wanting yachting and a yacht that is family friendly with lots of toys. It's a changed industry. And as well, the crew is at the younger end of the scale, and they are flooding the marketplace. There are so many more crew than there was, you know, years ago. I remember even, you know, talking in some of my interviews with some guys from 25 years ago or 20 years ago, stating that in order to hire crew, you would just go into the local watering hole, find the only one that was passed out on the bar, put him over your shoulder and head to the yacht, and he would wake up the next day in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, and you'd be like, you're a deckhand now, and he would be the deckhand. You know, that was as little as 20, 25 years ago. So you can see sort of there has been quite a huge change in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've heard recently, well, I mean, somebody that I know, they've actually dedicated their yacht, which is usually charter, and when it's not chartering, they've actually dedicated to ocean research groups, which is really cool. So there is like a mental shift. It's not just for like the parties anymore. It's more like experiences and going to see places. And there's way more world traveling yachts now as well, which is really good to see. Okay, so the next question, with everything going on in the world right now, what do you feel is the best bit of advice you can give a person that's just starting out in the industry? Share some of your words of wisdom for the newbies.
Yachting isn't glamorous. It's hard work. And you are not going to jump into yachting and be sitting on deck sipping a cocktail. That is something that is sold by some unscrupulous crew training programs. And there are, you know, there's some great schools out there, don't get me wrong, but there are some that are doing it strictly in order to make an income, and I get that. But you are a glorified servant, essentially, when you start out. You are scrubbing the head with a toothbrush, and that could be it doesn't matter what exotic location that you're going to. You might not even step foot on land the entire time. So you have to expect to work your butt off. Yes, you get paid well, but you get paid well because you're working hard. And if you don't work according to specifications, you're going to be replaced, because in yachting, realistically, they could pretty much fire you for any reason whatsoever. They might not like the color of your hair today, and see you later. So you have to be very aware. Yes, there's wonderful sides of yachting as well. And you know, I'm a big proponent for women's rights with Yachting International Radio. And I have been doing a series of interviews on very inspiring women captains that want to see, you know, women take a look at becoming a captain, because prior we would see that women would have sort of a stop point in their careers. So, you know what, go for it. This is a job that can actually bring you so much success and so much happiness, but you have to be prepared to work your ass off from day one. Otherwise, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, I've experienced it with people being replaced really, really quickly. I have heard the horror stories of, like, you know, the new guest coming on board and them not actually wanting people with dark hair on board, right? So it does happen. And like the hard work that goes into it is not just like, it's not just the physical, but it's like, you know, waking up in the morning and like you feel like you can't open your eyes, and you're only 3 days into the charter. It's exhausting, but it is definitely, how do I say it? It's worth it. It's, you've never learned so quickly that working the hardest you've ever worked in your life, but it pays off so well at the end. But you have to be able to put in the work, definitely. Okay, so that's really, really good advice. I'm loving it. The last question that I have for you is, what is the funniest or the most awkward story? Because I mean, you know a lot of yachties, and I'm sure you've heard all the stories. What is your top story that you've heard of somebody experiencing something on board, or something that you've experienced on board? What is your favorite funny and or awkward story?
I've heard a ton of stories for sure, but I think the stupidest story for me and my personal experience, and trust me, I get seasick. So yachting and me, ironically enough, do not mix. I didn't get into this to get on a yacht because I can't last. I had some good friends that had an absolutely beautiful yacht. And my eldest daughter would spend her summers on this yacht every single year. And I was invited for lunch one day, and they were in dock. And so I went on board for the lunch. And even that, I was a bit queasy, and we were, you know, on deck in the fresh air, not moving, in a sheltered harbor, right? So we had lunch, and then all of a sudden, and I knew they were taking off for a trip. They were heading to Ibiza or something afterwards. And all of a sudden, the engines started going, and I started full on panic. I literally considered jumping over the side of the yacht to get off that yacht, because I didn't want to be on that yacht when it took off. So everyone always laughs at me, because I am, you know, I did an interview, I think 2 years ago at the Palma Yacht Show. And it was in the galley at the Palma Yacht Show. So, you know, I mean, boat upon boat upon boat, they were all tied up nice and tight. And the 20-minute interview in the galley was enough to make me have to walk off seasickness for 2 hours afterwards, because that's how ill I felt.
Oh, wow.
So for me, it's quite ironic that here I am running Yachting International Radio, working with all these yachties, and you couldn't get me on a boat if your life depended upon it.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. I mean, I've been with other people on boats, and that they do get seasick, and some people don't understand it. It's like some people get seasick, some people don't, and when you do, it's such a struggle. Like people become dysfunctional, and people join the industry wanting to work on a yacht, and they're at your level of getting seasick, which is, maybe that's something to consider for all the newbies out there, is maybe first go and see if you do get seasick, because otherwise it'll just be a horrible experience for the first time that the boat leaves the dock. And that's not really what you want. You're there to, like, you know, work and be in it and be functioning, right? So maybe
Well,
just
I
go and
mean, you
test the
know,
waters a bit.
and you know yourself, I mean, there are times where you're working 18-hour days, and when you're seasick, it is debilitating. Like you cannot even move. You are literally hanging over the side of a boat, praying that you can breathe, let alone work. So if you do ever experience seasickness, yachting is not the place for you, because you're never ever going to be able to put in a full day.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. All right, well, that's a wrap for this interview, Ria. Thank you so much again for taking the time to sit down with me today. It's really been awesome.
Thank you for the invite. I really do appreciate it.
All right, I'll see you around. And for those of you that haven't joined yet, please go and join the group, Start Yachting. If you're new to the industry and you just want some guidance, the group is intended for you to come on, ask any questions you want, and everybody that has experience in that topic in the group will be more than happy to help you out. And if you want, please subscribe to the channel. There'll be more interviews coming, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.